In this program, we delve into the harrowing account of an online encounter that descended into pure terror. What began as a seemingly ordinary digital chat would soon spiral into a nightmare no one could have predicted. On average, a person can recognize roughly 5,000 different faces, yet only about 150 of them belong to people they know well. Statistics reveal that 1 in every 100 people lives with a serious mental illness. This sobering fact means it's highly probable that someone in your own circle requires psychological care. But what are the odds that a new acquaintance is hiding a violent nature? And what if that person didn't meet you by chance, but specifically targeted you? His intent was to bind Angela J., assault her, and then set the house ablaze. This was no idle threat. A gasoline can was already positioned in the bedroom. Angela J. was born and raised in California. During her high school years, her family relocated to Australia, the country her parents had originally come from. After her parents separated, she resided with her mother, Susan, and her sister, Danielle. Angela completed both high school and her university studies on the central coast of New South Wales, where she earned her degree in reproductive medicine from the local university. In 2016, Angela was based in Port Macquarie, completing her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at a local hospital. The young doctor found immense joy in helping bring new life into the world, and she was beloved by her patients. In her early 20s, she married her boyfriend, Ben. Their relationship was strong at first, but after Ben joined the Navy, they began to drift apart. The marriage ultimately crumbled under the weight of life's pressures and the personal struggles each of them was enduring. And so, at age 27, Angela decided to re-enter the dating scene, although her demanding career left her with very little free time. Like many people at the time, she turned to a dating app. Angela quickly drew the attention of several men, but one of them was particularly relentless. He showered her photos with compliments, a gesture Angela found flattering, and their conversations soon took a romantic turn. Paul Lambert, a 36-year-old man, was undeniably charming, with a captivating smile and prominent dimples. In August of 2016, they made plans to meet in person for their first date. A long wait was necessary, as Angela was living in Port Macquarie, while Paul was in Sydney. When the day finally came, Paul put all his plans on hold and boarded a flight to Port Macquarie, where he had already secured a reservation at a restaurant. The ambiance of the dinner was enhanced by live music. At first, Paul and Angela were shy, and shared several awkward silences. However, after a couple of drinks, the conversation started to flow, and they ended up talking for hours without pause. It was clear the first date had been a resounding success. The two discovered they shared a significant history. Both had been married and divorced before, and were now looking for a meaningful connection again. This was the start of a long-distance romance, one defined by frequent gifts and grand gestures of affection. Paul constantly sent Angela flowers and financed her trips. As it happened, Angela's job required frequent travel, and her new boyfriend would find out her destination ahead of time and contact the hotel to arrange for a room upgrade. He paid for these finer accommodations himself, which made Angela feel truly cherished. For the first time since her divorce, she felt a genuine romantic connection with a man. He seemed to care for her deeply and went to great lengths to make her happy. Angela would get butterflies in her stomach every time she thought about Paul. This new man seemed to tick all the boxes. In addition to being a kind person, Paul Lambert was also very handsome. He appeared to have a successful career and many friends, at least according to his Facebook profile. He was attentive and presented himself as a devoted family man, often sharing photos of weekend fishing trips with his nephew. Once the time felt right, Angela was ready to introduce Paul to her family. Her sister, Danielle, her mother, Susan, and her stepfather, Bill. Susan was immediately impressed upon meeting Paul. He was tall, good-looking, confident, and sharply dressed, and he greeted her with a beautiful bouquet of flowers. She was overjoyed to see her daughter looking so happy. Susan later raved to Bill about how wonderful Paul was and how much he clearly adored Angela. She felt her daughter was incredibly lucky to have found such a man. Bill, however, did not share her excitement. For some reason, he told his wife he had a bad feeling about Paul, was acting strange after just 5 minutes of talking to him. It's too bad that his male instincts were right. After only 6 weeks, Angela still felt the same way. Lambert became more controlling and overbearing, which hurt the couple's relationship every time Angela was a few minutes late for work. Paul would call and text her right away. He always checked to see which male co-workers she had talked to and when she left work and got home, as well as if she had stopped anywhere on the way. He got angry when Angela didn't answer her phone or answer his texts right away. In general, Paul's behavior was too harsh and controlling. The butterflies in her stomach turned into worry. Lambert insisted that they take their friendship to a whole new level. This made Angela feel bad, like she was being pushed off a cliff. She told him she wanted to end the relationship and suggested he try his luck with someone else. Right away, the stress she had been feeling built up over time got even worse. She'd already told Paul that she didn't want to keep dating him, but what she said made things worse. The intensity of his chase got stronger as soon as Angela broke up with Paul. He showed a whole new side of himself. Lambert texted Angela J several times a day, saying that he would kill himself or throw himself in front of a train or truck if she didn't come back to him. He called her a lot and said he had stolen the keys to her flat and that she would find his dead body there one day. Of course, Angela felt bad about breaking up with him. She felt bad because she hurt Paul and gave him hope for a new relationship. If, God forbid, he did kill himself, it would be her fault. She wanted to leave him so badly, but didn't know how. Angela wasn't really needed for anything. What she did to this man wouldn't change anything. In the end, it would only make things worse because Paul was a liar. No one thought that his real name wasn't Paul Lambert. Paul Scales was his real name. He was kicked out of the US for stalking his ex-girlfriend and had been arrested before for hitting his ex-wife. Paul was very sensitive to rejection because a doctor had told him he had bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. Lambert should not have been in that part of New South Wales in 2016 when he met Angela, because 10 protection orders were out against him from 5 different women. In Queensland, Lambert was being closely watched by the police. From the time he was dating Angela, Paul did things that were similar to what he usually did. He basically tricked his target into a trap and then used force to control them. When someone wants to gain power and control over another person, they use coercive control, which includes threats, manipulation, and different kinds of emotional and mental harm. So, what kind of person was Paul Lambert? His real name is Paul Michael Scales, and he was born on August 10, 1980 in Queensland, Australia. When he was 4 years old, his parents split up. She was married and had her own family. When Paul was younger, he also had 2 half-brothers and 2 half-sisters, because Paul's dad got married again and had more kids. Since he was in his early 20s, Paul has a past of hurting girls and women. He met Angela J when he was 36 years old. Before this occasion, he'd been violent with his women for about 13 years. As was already said, 10 protection orders were issued against him because of his ex-partners. When his women tried to leave him, Paul kept them from leaving by being controlling, scaring them, and sometimes even hitting them. Lambert put on whole plays and made death threats. He made up big lies, like saying that his family members were dying or that he had been diagnosed with cancer. He told them that adults had hurt and abused him as a child. Briefly, he did everything he could to keep his partner, no matter what. The women came back for a while because they felt bad for him. When that didn't work, Paul called his ex-girlfriend's family or her new boyfriend and made threats. There were times when the relationship turned romantic, but most of the time, the police were called and Paul was given a protection order. He married a woman he had known for a few years in February 2014, but the marriage didn't last long, according to Lambert's ex-co-workers. He left his wife just a few weeks after the wedding, even though they had talked to builders and gotten quotes for building a house together. He had done this over a mysterious woman he'd kept secret from everyone. In the aftermath, Paul and his wife managed to reconcile, and for a time, they remained a couple. But just 7 months later, in September of 2014, he traveled to Orlando, Florida, and began an affair with a woman he'd met online after being fired from his job in Brisbane when the owner lost patience with his petty thefts. He flew to visit his new partner on several occasions. Whenever he was caught stealing, Paul would claim confusion, insisting he'd simply forgotten to take the item out of his pocket. It was a preposterous claim. He wasn't destitute. He had more than enough money for a comfortable life, suggesting the thefts were a compulsion, a dark hobby. On the surface, Paul appeared to be an exemplary employee, but those who interacted with him frequently soon realized it was all a carefully constructed facade. Lambert was known for overthinking every minor detail. According to his colleagues, he was constantly scheming, seemingly plotting 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He was perceived as intelligent, but undeniably strange. And while Lambert excelled professionally and earned a good living, he struggled to form meaningful connections outside of work. He held a warped view of commitment, believing a promise was an eternal bond. After their marriage ended, Paul relocated to Florida to be near Brittany, a move she explicitly did not want. Lambert arranged a meeting and convinced her to agree to a 3-month trial period to see if they could reconcile. However, Lambert's behavior became so bizarre and unsettling that Brittany ended things just 1 month in, pleading with him to never contact her again. But it was too late. The well-known television reporter had already become his new obsession. When Brittany informed Paul that their relationship was over, Paul resorted to his usual playbook of guilt, harassment, control, and psychological torment in a desperate attempt to keep her from leaving. He began stalking her, threatened suicide, intimidated her family, and even called her boss at the TV newsroom to reveal things Keel had told him in confidence. He then told the reporter he'd suffered a head injury and had terminal brain cancer. For Brittany, this was a particularly cruel lie, as her own father had nearly died from the same disease. She had shared this painful family history with Lambert when they first met. Now, he was ruthlessly exploiting her greatest vulnerability. Paul also invented stories about deceased relatives, claimed to have 9 distinct personalities, and relentlessly bombarded Keel with emails, notes, and phone calls. Next, Paul shifted his strategy, blaming all of his disturbing actions on a fictional twin brother he named Michael Lambert. He spun an elaborate tale claiming that he and Michael had been dating Keel simultaneously, all without her knowledge. Paul then issued vicious threats against Brittany's professional reputation, vowing to publicly humiliate her and leak damaging secrets to jeopardize her career. Beyond that, he attempted to extort money from Keel in exchange for leaving her alone. In short, he did everything in his power to make the journalist's life a living hell. Finally, pushed to her breaking point by the escalating threats and harassment, she went to the police and reported his behavior. The ordeal left her physically ill, unable to eat or sleep, and terrified to leave her own home. He was arrested in May of 2015 and charged with stalking and extortion. In a Florida courtroom, Paul first revealed his frightening, psychopathic tendencies to the public. In June of 2015, Paul was deported from the United States, escorted by 2 federal marshals, following a 1-month stay in an immigration detention center. It was then that Paul Scales officially changed his name to Paul Lambert, a calculated move to erase his past. Upon his return to Australia, he immediately began tormenting his ex-wife, who reported him to the police and secured a protection order against him. Paul, however, violated this order on numerous occasions. During one terrifying incident, he assaulted her in her car, punching her in the face and attempting to strangle her. In May of 2016, Lambert was finally sentenced to a 12-month probation term. He then relocated to Kogarah, a suburb of Sydney, and found a job as an insurance salesman at a scooter shop. This move was a direct violation of his probation, as he was forbidden from leaving Queensland without explicit permission from the Probation Commission. When Paul first met Angela J., he presented himself as a caring partner, but soon his familiar pattern emerged, beginning with complaints about non-existent illnesses, bombarding her with abusive calls and texts. Feeling a pang of guilt, Angela tried to de-escalate the situation by inviting him to a school function. She set a clear boundary. They would attend strictly as friends. Angela secretly hoped Paul would move on and find someone new, but her hopes were quickly dashed. An argument erupted, escalating into a full-blown fight, and Paul stormed out of the event, taking Angela's cell phone and keys with him. Stranded, Angela was forced to spend the night at her sister Danielle's house, but Lambert's campaign of harassment was far from over. He expanded his intimidation, targeting Danielle with a barrage of calls and emails. Then, Danielle received a message from a man named Dan Evenden, who claimed to be a friend of Paul's. This stranger explained that Lambert was distraught over their breakup, and that he had just witnessed Paul nearly get run over by a truck, saying he had jumped right into the road. He claimed the truck swerved at the last second, narrowly avoiding the heartbroken man. This story, relayed through texts, only amplified Angela's anxiety. She was terrified her actions had driven him to the brink. Seeing how distressed his sister was, Dan Evenden convinced Angela to report everything to the police the following day. What the sisters didn't realize at the time was that Dan was an elaborate fabrication, a persona created by Paul Lambert himself. The next morning, October 30th, 2016, Danielle took Angela to the police station. After running his name through their database, officers informed the women that Paul had a history of violent offenses. However, the police assessed him as a greater threat to himself than to them. Still, as a precaution, they instructed the sisters to call 911 immediately if they felt endangered. Angela J. then sought a civil protection order against Lambert for domestic violence. but authorities were unable to serve him with the papers. Attempts to contact Paul and hold him accountable were futile. He simply ignored the court order. From the police station, Ange went directly to her shift at the hospital. She considered confiding in her colleagues about the situation, but was overcome with shame, feeling she had somehow put herself in this dangerous position. In the end, she said nothing. After knowing him for just 2 months, Dr. J took a chilling precaution, telling her supervisors to call the police if she ever failed to show up for work. Angela had no idea just how sinister her ex-lover's plans had become. An old friend of Lambert's recalled a pattern. Paul would fall hard and fast for all his partners, which might explain his intense fixation on Dr. J. But no one could have predicted his obsession would escalate to such a terrifying level. In late October of 2016, Paul flew back to Port Macquarie, where he rented a white Corolla station wagon. He told the rental agent he was in town to see his girlfriend, explaining they'd had a fight and he didn't want to leave things on a bad note. He insisted he wanted to make amends. The employee at the car rental agency later recalled that the man seemed extremely agitated, an impression reinforced by the aggressive way he threw his bags into the trunk. His next stop was a local hardware store, where he purchased an axe, a utility knife, and 2 meters of duct tape. From there, he drove to Angela's house and lay in wait for her to return from work. Angela was stunned to find her ex-boyfriend standing on her porch. Paul assured her he just wanted to talk, which momentarily put her at ease. He then made a strange confession, claiming he had 2 distinct personalities and that the bad Paul sometimes took over. He then told her that if she noticed any dangerous shift in his behavior during their conversation, she should call the police immediately. Paul then admitted that Dan, his supposed friend, was not a real person. Lambert confessed he had invented the persona as a desperate attempt to get her attention. He claimed he didn't know what else to do to win her back. But by the end of their talk, another argument had erupted. Lambert accused Dr. J of regretting she had ever met him, and she pleaded with him to leave her alone and stay out of her life for good. Paul eventually left, but immediately resumed his campaign of threats. He told her bluntly that her house wasn't safe, since he still had a key to the front door. He sent another chilling message, saying his happiness wouldn't last, especially after her rejection. But Paul didn't go home. Instead, he checked into a hotel directly across the street from Angela's hospital and began to surveil her. For days, he meticulously tracked her work schedule and noted where she was spending her nights. He would also frequently watch Dr. J inside her own home, hiding in the bushes and peering through her windows. Unaware that Paul was so close and constantly watching, she clung to the hope that her obsessive ex had finally returned to Sydney. Despite this, she still intended to change the locks and keep a low profile. She kept a knife on her desk at all times, no longer feeling safe in her own home. On November 1st, 2016, Paul drove to a gas station and filled a can with gasoline. The following day, November 2nd, he purchased a sledgehammer and a wrench. The man was clearly making preparations. That same day, November 2nd, 2016, Angela returned home from work briefly to feed her cat and grab a quick dinner. Her plan was to stay the night with her sister, but she was exhausted and rushing to finish her work before heading to Daniel's place. Angela put her food in the microwave, then headed toward her bedroom to get ready for the next day. In the hallway, she was ambushed. The identity of Dr. J's assailant was a shock. It was Paul Lambert. He clamped his hand over her mouth, looked her directly in the eye, and said, "It's okay. I just want to talk to you." He then forced Angela into the bedroom, ordered her to sit on the bed, and began interrogating her about other men. Paul revealed that he had removed the kitchen knives from her nightstand, replacing them with duct tape, zip ties, and a pair of pants. Realizing the grave danger she was in, Angela tried to escape, but her attempt was cut short. Paul was now brandishing a knife. Overwhelmed by shock, Angela felt nothing at first. All she could see was blood spreading across her clothes, followed by an eruption of sharp, agonizing pain all over her body. Paul stabbed Angela 11 times in the chest, arms, and legs. He then grabbed the can of gasoline and poured the liquid over her head. The fuel filled her eyes, ears, and mouth as it streamed down her body. Dr. J was paralyzed with terror, knowing precisely what was about to happen. The horror was indescribable. She was petrified that he was about to burn her alive. In a strange twist of fate, the gasoline made her skin slippery, allowing her to break free from Lambert's tight grip. Miraculously, Angela escaped the house. Covered in blood, she stumbled toward her neighbor's home, desperate for help. That neighbor was Angela's friend, Steve. He had already noticed an unfamiliar man in her kitchen earlier that day. When he heard the screams, he immediately grabbed a steel bar and rushed to her aid. Steve found Angela grievously injured. He helped her into his garage where, with remarkable composure, Dr. J instructed him on how to treat the wounds and stop the bleeding. Her clear instructions saved her own life in the critical moments before the ambulance arrived. Meanwhile, Steve's daughter called the police as Angela finally lost consciousness. Unsure how to describe her horrific injuries to the dispatcher, her friend focused on keeping her awake by constantly asking her questions. By this time, Lambert had already fled the scene. As police cruisers pulled up, Paul sped off in a car he had parked behind Angela's house, all while making calls on his cell phone. He managed to call 3 people as his victim was receiving first aid. On the way to the hospital, Angela's phone rang. Steve, riding with her in the ambulance, answered it. It was Paul on the other end of the line. In a hushed voice, he asked if she was all right. Seemingly detached from his actions, Paul then called Angela's mother. He told her that her daughter had been attacked. The third call was to the police. He reached an operator and began to confess. Bizarrely, he spoke of himself in the third person. Paul told the dispatcher about his plan to attack his lover, douse her in gasoline, and set her on fire so that she could never be with anyone else. It was obvious that Lambert's monstrous plan had failed. The police began to track him. They triangulated his cell phone signal, initiating a high-speed pursuit north along the Pacific Highway. To stop the fugitive's car, officers had to deploy spike strips. The chase ended roughly 150 kilometers from Port Macquarie. Paul emerged from the vehicle, barefoot and holding a knife, wearing only shorts and a sweater. The officers attempted to subdue him with a taser, but it was ineffective. Lambert raised the knife and screamed, "Shoot me!" A tense standoff between the police and the criminal began. Suddenly, Paul lunged at one of the officers with the knife. Instantly, 2 other officers reacted and opened fire. Paul was struck multiple times. The impact was immediate. Lambert's arm went limp, hanging uselessly at his side. That's when the man dropped the knife, sank slowly to his knees, and finally collapsed face first onto the pavement. 36-year-old Paul Lambert was pronounced dead at the scene. The rental car was then searched. Among his belongings, a note was discovered in which he expressed a desire to end his own life, claiming he was a terrible person. For some, his supposed attempts at redemption were meaningless. But now, the community could finally be at peace because he had eliminated the evil he represented. It became clear the suicide note was a calculated part of his violent plan. Later, the investigation revealed that Paul had showered in Angela's home while awaiting her return from work. On the steamed-up mirror, he had scrawled, "I love Paul." He had also hidden the fire extinguisher in a bedroom closet, intending to control the blaze he planned to set. Perhaps the most shocking revelation of all was that this entire tragedy could have been prevented. Just days before the attack, Lambert had been stopped by the New South Wales police for speeding and driving without a valid license. But the officers were unaware that he was also violating the terms of his parole. As a result, they simply issued him a fine. Miraculously, Dr. Angela J survived her ex-boyfriend's brutal assault. She felt an immense sense of relief upon learning that the man who hunted her could no longer cause her harm. Having escaped death against all odds, she experienced a feeling that bordered on euphoria. For a long time, she remained in a state of shock, finding it surreal that she was still alive after mentally preparing herself for the end. In the days that followed, the only visible reminder of the horrific event in the quiet neighborhood of Port Macquarie was a trail of blood on a neighbor's driveway. The attack left Angela so traumatized that she moved away shortly after, unable to return to the town that once held so many happy memories for her. For 6 years before she met Paul Lambert, Angela J had built a happy life, a peace that was about to be violently shattered. Her relationship with him, which lasted only 6 weeks, culminated in stalking, harassment, and a vicious murder attempt. With the support of her family, friends, and even former patients, she struggled to overcome the deep physical and emotional trauma. Dr. J reflected that many women are not as fortunate as she was to escape. Statistics reveal a grim reality. In Australia, approximately 1 woman is killed each week by a current or former partner. Angela believes that by sharing her story, she can help others understand the true nature of domestic violence. In 2021, she married an orthopedic surgeon named Ben Hardy. They had met at work, and he became the rock of support she needed. Ben was instrumental in helping Angela navigate her long road to recovery. Today, she is in a healthy, loving relationship and dedicates her energy to helping other survivors, using her platform as both a doctor and an advocate. Angela J. is profoundly grateful for the swift response of the police and medical teams who saved her life. She urges other victims to trust their instincts, confide in others, and reach out for help. Don't ever worry that you might be misunderstood if something feels wrong. Your family and friends would rather know what is happening. Today, Dr. J serves as an ambassador for the White Ribbon Organization, which is dedicated to ending violence against women, and she says her mission is to give a voice to the voiceless. Angela and her family also participate in various events to support a cancer charity, and to raise funds for programs in Australia aimed at preventing domestic violence. She survived, and now she is in a position to help save countless other lives. Thank you for watching and for joining us for this important story. Every like, comment, and share helps spread awareness and sends a message that truth and justice still matter. If you haven't already, please subscribe and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future investigations. Please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who believe in the power of real stories and the pursuit of justice. Your engagement is crucial in helping us reach a wider audience and continuing these vital conversations. We are grateful to each and every one of you who watches our content, shares your thoughts, and participates in this community. This community is built on a foundation of truth, awareness, and compassion, and together, we can continue to shine a light on the darkest corners of our world. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant, and look out for one another, because sometimes the world is not as safe as it appears.